welcome to the Gauntlet podcast. This is the Gauntlet gaming community's regular podcast talking about games that we played in the community and about particular topics. My name is Lowell, and I'm joined by my co-host Sherry.
Hello.
And each episode we bring on someone from the community, and today we're really, really lucky because we have a long-time Gauntlet person who is a game designer, a voice of reason, a community-focused gamer, and an all-around good person who I adore. Garrett, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you can't see me smiling so much. Yes, thank you for this introduction. That means a lot to me.
You've always been an important part of the community, and I'm so glad, especially in light of what you're going to talk about a little later, that we have the chance to bring you on to talk about some of the work you've done. In this first segment of the show, we're going to, each of us, look back at the previous month or so of games, talk about what we played, and then pick one game that we played on the Gauntlet or during the Gauntlet Community Open Gaming, and talk about that a little bit more in detail. Sherry, we're going to have you start. So why don't you tell us how your gaming was? We're here in December. How was sort of November, early December for you?
Well, it's been awesome, and it just kind of keeps getting better on the Gauntlet. So this last month, I've played off Gauntlet, 7th Sea, 13th Age, Star Trek Express, Hearts of Wulin with the Supernatural playbooks, also Jammy's Dragon Age, Hearts of Wulin reskin, which was so fun to make characters for. Hopefully we'll get to play a little bit. And then also Sam Zimmerman's Forged in the Dark playtest of Hunter's Code, which is a Monster Hunter game. And the first session was amazing, but it's a playtest, and I don't even know where to send you to look for what state it's in, so I can't talk about it yet. I'll try to get that information from Sam when I can tell people more about it. But on Gauntlet, I played Academy of the Blade, which is a Hearts of Wulin stretch goal version of Hearts of Wulin. I played 7th Sea Express. Whenever I say Express, that's Lowell has gone in and chopped down the mechanics to something that he thinks will work for him. So 7th Sea Express. I played Blood Ties, which is Gerald's Hearts of Wulin plus Brindlewood Bay, and it's in playtest. And it was really fun. We're going to play some more of it. I'm looking forward to that.
That gets a lot of buzz in the German community as well.
Yeah, it is.
Ooh,
yeah.
Neat.
And then Brinkwood Legacy, the start of that campaign with Jammy. And we started it out with their Trophy Dark introduction to the Brinkwood world, which is called In the Face of Our Despair. Jammy wrote that. It was Trophy Dark. It's the first time I played Trophy Dark. It was excellent, and I want to play it some more. Our game referred back to those Refuge playtests that we did earlier, and it was just sort of a very meaningful and sad and tragic and good feeling game. I don't know how to say it. It was really a good experience with the same players that we were playing Refuge with, so we already have that feeling of a campaign going on. But today, I'm going to talk about Academy of the Blade. First, because I know that all the backers for Hearts of Wulin can go out and get the play materials for this if they're interested in. But also, I know that Hearts of Wulin is getting close to delivering, so yay. So let's talk about Academy of the Blade. It is a stretch goal for Hearts of Wulin. It will be included in those materials. It's available to the backers now on Kickstarter. If you're a backer, you can go and download the information about it and even start playing. It is about a mysterious academy where duels determine your social standing and even your fate. It's in the vein of Revolutionary Girl Una and a host of other mysterious school media where the students are pawns who have to find their own way. It's a great reordering of the elements of Hearts of Wulin to create a really sharp set of student archetypes. What worked for me is, the playbooks are so clever. For instance, the student council rep, they get to choose between being teacher's pet, class president, or goody two-shoes. The delinquent is a truant, a boss, or a beast. Class clown is either flirt, sidekick, or school idol. It's just very clever all the way down. Transfer student, ingenue, seeker, or mundane. So very different even within those sort of archetypes. And they really hit that sense of high school tropes that was fun. You immediately recognized what you were getting. and it opened up, what do you say, a very intuitive way to find your way around the school. Just those playbooks right from the get-go. We did shape our game heavily around Revolutionary Girl Utna. And Utna is, if you've ever seen it, it's just drama and emotions first. It's just out there with its heart, playing out every fairy tale. And it's one of those pieces of media where every action is significant, and it can take a sharp corner into tragedy or absurdity at any second. And the game did that too. It was right there. Everything was heightened, I think is the best way to put it. My fellow players were so good. Jamie and Daryl and Patrick will make any game the best game. Just so good. And the other thing that I was really struck by were that the minor modifications that were made to the duel move, both versus NPC and versus fellow PCs, really opened up the duel for level of the interest that it brings. It provided more complications and ways to shift the fiction. Loved that. And I loved the confession move that was added. It was amazing.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what those mechanics look like?
Well, essentially, for one thing with the duel move, it is split up between duel versus NPC and versus fellow PC. They're separated a little bit more. And instead of going, well, you win, and you describe how you win, or you hit that middle part where things get complicated, instead it has a whole thing of where you can actually move the fiction around and you get more interesting complications. So if you win, you still get to describe how it happened, but you also get to shift the fiction. You can say, oh, well, but now they have a crush on me, or they're impressed with me, or they're scared of me, or those kinds of things. So you can add sort of that thing when you're fighting versus NPC. When you're fighting a PC, if you challenge another PC, they can accept your offer and go to the duel, or they can make a counter offer. And if they make a counter offer, you have to accept their terms, or both of you kind of take a hit and the challenger chooses whether they win, lose, or draw. But essentially they build that fiction. So you have a little bit more ways to move the fiction around and make it interesting and heighten all the emotion that goes along with it. It's really what's going on. And you were in on this. What do you say are some of the changes? I'm just doing this as a crazy player, all excited for everything. So,
the player versus player move, which is not a rolled move in Hearts of Wulin, we've made it so it's more of a back and forth dialogue now, rather than offer and accept or decline. And the confession move, the idea that when you go to confess your love, it never really goes well, which is very genre appropriate. So if you want to go to that move, and I like how that played out.
Yes, when you go to confession, you go to heartbreak. That's what you've chosen. So, if there are things that I'm less sure about, of those, 3 of the players plus the GM knew Revolutionary Girl Utna, and we had built our game very much for that. And even the remaining player who hadn't watched Revolutionary Girl started watching it after the first session. So we really got the game we wanted. But I can't 100% vouch for the players coming in with different touchstones. It reads like it would work, but this isn't a magical high school game. This is a mysterious high school game, and high weirdness all revolves around the dueling. So in some ways, I was so set on Revolutionary Girl Utna that I didn't even take in most of what was going on if that weren't our touchstones.
Oh, interesting.
I would assume it would play. I loved all the playbooks right from the first time I read them, and they seemed great for any school game. But I would have to have someone else who's coming without that knowledge of Revolutionary Girl Utna tell me how it played.
Well, I have no touchstone in the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, also not too many touchstones for Hearts of Wulin. But I learned about the genre through Hearts and Wulin, I guess. So what I found fascinating always in Hearts of Wulin is the way it handles the duels, and that the duels reflect the most important social currency in the setting. And so I wonder, in this mystery school system, what social currency is at stake in the duels? Like, what do these scholars have actually, what makes this the core conflict or the core dynamic of the setting?
And that's the thing that's awesome about it is you don't understand why it's so important. You just know that, like, you have to do these duels. You get sent this letter and they say, you will duel this person, and you can't get out of it.
Ooh.
And then everything changes around you after the duel. depending on what's happening, and there's secrets and there's mysterious, and so it's just like being in high school when you don't know the rules, right? And you do something you're told to do, and then everything changes, and you're like, what's going on? It's a conspiracy, but it is a conspiracy in this game. So.
And that not only happens on character level, but also on player level, right?
Yes.
So also the mechanics don't make that 100% clear, but it's play to find out what this is simulating.
Exactly, like what the conspiracy is. Yeah. So, and the thing is the players are making that as much as the GM is making it.
My favorite bit is I had them all decide that they had received like a tarot card, but they had to come up with a new suit. The mysterious card that they got had an image of them. And so like Daryl's card, I think he's the Knight of Scythes. And I think Patrick is the Prince of Nothing. And Sherry, what was yours again?
Two of Crowns.
And then I took all of those images and I've worked that into the motifs for all the decorations in the school. And there's been other sort of tarot elements and things. And they trying to figure out why this happened. And they think it might be a cycle that they're not remembering. And Patrick was here last year, but he can't remember what happened and all of this stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of emergent story because we are figuring out what the whole backstory is because we don't know.
This is like paint the scene to zero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is really wonderful. And the game sessions themselves were dynamite. I look forward to playing more. If you know Revolutionary Go Utna, you need to play the game. If you don't, you'll probably have an awesome time. I am sure of it. But I'm not that person. So, but the other thing is that those core elements of Hearts of Wulin, the dual and inner conflict particularly, always lead to a game that makes me feel happy and swoony and excited and really invested in the fiction. And this game does that to the nines.
Awesome. Garrett, why don't you tell us about how your gaming has gone?
Oh, yes. You need to be so kind and allow me not to only talk about November, but going back.
Oh, absolutely. You had, in the midst of this, a fire.
Yes.
That turned everything upside down. But I want everybody to remember that while Garrett's going through this, he was also dealing with the fire when he lists off his games.
Yes. And I managed not to make every game I played about fire. So that is also something, but it's interesting how many metaphors are about fire. And when you are confronted with such a theme and suddenly you see it everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so life-changing events, but also a lot of work because I have a new job, which was necessary for me, Corona-related. So I played Off the Gauntlet, Desert. That's a game by Julian Kluge, who is also a community member and a fabulous designer because he is eager to burn down all kinds of fundaments the hobby has.
You should make sure you give us the link so we can put that in the show notes too.
I will do that. Yes, it's available for free online. Lost Roads I play with Ari Ramsey. That's another one-on-one, and that's super awesome. I played a live-action online game by Jason Morningstar called Wizard's Querulous Drama. I also played my own game, Took Fast, Took Furious, together with Tomer Gurans.
Awesome.
Took Fast, Took Furious is a fantastic little racing game. I played Alice is Missing with the German community. I played Zoom Reality, which is an art LARP, a game written by Susa Pfizer, who is like an artist from Philadelphia, I think. And she has then invited us 2 weeks later to a debrief of 2 hours. So a really long debrief where we watched key scenes of what we did together. And that was extremely interesting and something I definitely want to do again. I also played Pop Online. We played that on a Discord that you can also call a live action game. And finally, I played The Batcave. That's a game I wrote and which got honorable mention at this year's Golden Cobra Challenge. And The Batcave is a game which you can play on Zoom perfectly because there you have an option to turn your video upside down. And then, as my son suddenly said, when he figured out that there is this feature, look, now you look like hanging from the ceiling as a bat. And there was a game idea born, and you play this, and it's hilarious, but also quite nice because it's a family of bats, and they have to make tough decisions, and still on the joyful side of games. That I played at 3W6 convention. On Gauntlet Community Open Gaming, and that's the game I want to talk about, I played Radio Silence. Radio Silence is, again, a live-action online game. However, borderline to what you could just simply call a story game. So let me continue talking about this in the discussion section, because this is a game which excites me the most from all those I just listed. However, I would also like to mention that although I didn't game much, I also did a lot of other things, actually, which is that I was on panels, for example, for Metatopia to talk about live-action online games. I did a panel on actual play culture for live-action online games, which is different to some degree, but also similar. And I think the Gauntlet play culture is influencing the live-action online game actual play culture there a lot, because there are a lot of lessons which we learned at the Gauntlet, what is important also in terms of safety, which needs to be transferred to this new kind of games. And there is not much experience. Like LARPers have sometimes documentation, but this effect of filming you constantly when you play online is a different story. And also the question arises, why do you do that? So I also was nominated for a German Progressive LARP Award, the FRID, and I won it in the promotion of the hobby category. So that was quite cool. That was something I really enjoyed, because game design is one thing, but being there for a community and being part of a community and seeing new stars arise and see shy people turning into enthusiastic mechabots stomping over the ground of what has been done before. That is what I'm actually living for. So this category was, I would say, even more important than any design award, I would say. No matter how much I like my designs. But give me the opportunity to tell you about Radio Silence.
Yes.
So Radio Silence is a game designed by Hannah J. Gray. She's a new designer, by the way. So her second game, I think, maybe even her first. It is designed to be played online, and that for a good reason, because it was handed in a game competition organized by Game and a Curry. That's a game publisher around Banana Chan. They will publish that game beginning of next year, I think, in an anthology with all the other winners. I was on the jury for this competition and immediately loved that game. It's a 3-player game and designed to be played in 1 hour. And the setting is as follows. 2 people meet at a party or elsewhere. They fall in love, but it happens they don't exchange numbers, and it seems that also their names are not easy to be Googled. So a week later, they listened to a radio show. And while they talked at that party, they told each other what their favorite song is. And in that radio show, which they also told each other that they love it, one of the favorite songs is played. And directly afterwards, a listener wish comes in and is wishing for the favorite song of the second person. And so they see the other person is also in the line. And they continue making wishes to the radio host, who seems not to have too many other people wishing for songs for. So the radio host plays their songs. And that's the way they start communication again. And this is the game. We are playing the radio host and the 2 people who try to get in touch again. And the dialogue spins off from the song titles we wish. So you ask a question by putting a song title in there, like, do you want to be my girl, for example, or something like this, or will we ever find a way out here? And then the other person responds, and it continues with a question from the second player, and so on and so forth for 45 minutes, and we actually play the songs. We listen to the songs from beginning to end, and then the next song starts. So it's 45 minutes of music you listen to with an open ear and try to understand what message the other person wants to send to you. And at the end of the game, you put the song titles together and you have a tiny little dialogue together, which might decide about the future of this couple or not. Maybe they will never meet again. So that is the game.
Wow.
Why do I like this game so much? Well, maybe because I played with Greg Gelder, on Gauntlet Community Open Gaming. But actually also I played with Michael before, who is also a community member, and he's an extremely well-versed K-pop fan, and so all his songs were K-pop songs, and I learned so much about K-pop, you can't believe it. It was fantastic. So this game is emotionally intense. Why? Obviously because music can be quite intimate, and you reveal a lot of your personal taste there, because what do you do when you look for songs? You go through your personal collection somewhere. I, for example, use Spotify for that purpose. And you take your time. It's slow play. It's really slow play, because you just say one little sentence, but you listen to this sentence for 4 or 5 minutes. Sometimes it's not perfect to just take the title. Sometimes the refrain also makes more sense. But you can easily adapt that. Yeah, and you learn about the other player. So how do they react? What do you see in them when you respond to their songs again? What message do you tell the other player, and maybe not only the character? I like games which are really simple and then lead to such richness. So it doesn't have much on its bones, but it leads to a whole universe of conversations afterwards, of things to think about. I still sometimes listen to the playlists we put together in the games I played, because they work. They are like a designed album. Well, and then character generation is very simple. And here I need to deviate a little bit already from the standard setup as it is written in the game. You just pick a song, the favorite song, and that's your character. And that also is so powerful and gives so much structure, also to see how the other player is interpreting what you're giving them there. So that is extremely good. What I'm less sure about.
Well, let me ask you this before we go too much further.
Yes.
And this may be something you're talking about. So, Greg, American background, you, German background, and then you mentioned Misha's K-pop knowledge. What was it like, the interaction? Because you probably do come from at least a slightly different musical environment, what you grew up with, what was important and things like that. How did that fit in with your experience of the play?
It fit in extremely real, because that is also how actual love relationships start with. You are strangers at the beginning, and you think you know the other person, and then you figure out that they react with something you really hadn't anticipated. Indeed, yeah, sometimes you start listening to a song and you think like, okay, let's get over this. But then you take your time and you figure out there's a beauty in this song, and somebody has selected it with a lot of passion. And then you start seeing the beauty as well. And you're excited to respond to that on equal terms. So yeah, it is real in that sense. The cultural background, I would say, even helps. So maybe I wouldn't like to play this game with myself.
Right.
Yeah, indeed. However, the original game has a third player in there, and that's the radio host. But I played it now twice, and I every time decided to not play with the radio host, because I honestly don't see exactly what the radio host is doing the whole time. Mm-hmm. Just switching records, and not even like a DJ having the work of switching records, because the other people decide what is coming up next. So for sure you can fill that with radio host bubble, but that's not worth having a player around for. And the intimacy of 2 players, I think, is a stronger argument than having a third player making the radio program a little bit smoother. Well, and then the original game has quite detailed pre-generated characters. And I think that is unnecessary, and picking a song is the only thing I needed for the way I wanted to play that game. But I can imagine that for others that is helpful to have, to give a little bit more substance at the beginning. On the technical side, I was a DJ, by the way, when I was in my 20s. Not like a DJ with mixing and scratching and everything, but I was a goth DJ. So I was playing one song after another. So exactly what you need for this game. But still, you hear a song, and at the same time, you already need to look for the next one. You need to have some knowledge about music to be able to pick something appropriate without being able to listen into it. And then, for sure, when you play this game, I was lucky to have players who were able to quickly search their database, their personal one, somehow. you somehow need a way to share the music. And for example, if you do that with Zoom's built-in share your sound from your computer, you will have a loss of quality, for example. So the best way would be if both players, for example, have something like a Spotify account where you just can share the URL and then everybody can listen independently. With Michael, for example, we played over YouTube. We shared YouTube links and then also had the videos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure yet what I prefer. Videos also can distract a little bit sometimes. Yeah, and question songs are hard to find. That's my last issue with the game. So if I would play that again, I would be a little bit more mild on that and say, you can make everything into a question and just rephrase a little bit what the song is about, as long as it fits well and gives you the right push. However, Greg disagreed, for example. He said it's important to have proper questions, even if they are difficult to find, because then you have the right impulse again for the next response.
Interesting.
But indeed, that's something you need to figure out. And I will offer that game again at a convention in a couple of weeks. Oh, in many weeks, actually, end of January at a German convention, but to be played in English, depending on who's playing with you. And then we will group in pairs, and then each pair can play independently.
Neat.
Very cool.
Well, and obviously, it is language independent after the introduction. That's also pretty cool. In the end, I think this is only the start. Music in games is something we can explore online in even more ways, in much different ways than what you could do offline. The sad part for me is that I can't do actual plays from this game because of copyright violations en masse. It's a constant copyright violation. If it's not made music by Lou Quaid, for example, he wouldn't mind, I would say.
Anything else you want to say about it?
I would love to see more music put together in this way into other tabletop RPGs as well, because I think it can be quite rich as a design option.
It's something I had it never occurred to me. When you put this in the show notes, I was like, what? So this is really amazing.
But it's weird because we always go for soundtracks to our games and stuff like that, and we have unofficial soundtracks to campaigns that we've played where we're like, oh yeah, this song is this is a Changeling song, and those kinds of things.
True.
But we've never done the thing of having it as part of a dialogue or that sort of thing. But yeah, music, wow, it brings so much. It's so rich because it's not just the words, it's the music and it's the idea that someone is listening to it. You're listening to it. Yeah.
So let me talk about what I did in the last several weeks. Off Gauntlet, I did this 7th Sea Express, which essentially is a D6 system adaptation to do 7th Sea. We did our 13th Age game. We did Star Trek Express. We did Hearts of Wulin with Supernatural. I did a playtest with Dan and Jesse Abelman of Dan and his son's game, City of Whispers, which I'm very excited about. It's kind of a city building fantasy game, which is very much in my wheelhouse. And we did the sort of character creation look through of Jammy's Dragon Age Hearts of Wulin reskin, which was quite striking. On Gauntlet, we did Academy of the Blade, as we've just talked about. I also did, this is me saying French, a Cour de l'Épée, essentially the Three Musketeers setting for Hearts of Wulin, which was quite fun. Has a lot of elements that I was surprised. In 2 sessions, we got a really nice arc for the characters. I also started running 7th Sea, this D6 adaptation on the Gauntlet. And then Knights Black Agents Express, did the first session of that, which I really liked. And the last thing is for our Star Wars Saturday game, I did the Droids and One Last Job. And I kind of want to talk about those two together. If you've been following the podcast, you probably heard us talk about Star Wars Saturdays, which is a project that Rich Rogers started 3 years ago. Then this last weekend, we've had a bunch of GMs come and over the weekend just run Star Wars 1-shots or 2-shots with various different systems, essentially all different things. So I got a chance to play 2 of these. The Droids is an adaptation of Jason Morningstar's The Skeletons. And then One Last Job is an early Grant Howitt, designer of Spire, Strata, Heart. It's an early version of one of their games. I'm not going to talk about that as much. It was a blast to play, but the rules themselves are pretty early designed. They're a little wonky. They have a lot of like multiple layers of choices for crunch in it. Jamie played with the math a little to try and make it easier to play or teach, and we made some changes on the fly, and it was fun. But it's a game, if I were going to do that again, I would really want to go back and look at it because there's a lot in there that I don't think is necessarily needed for the feel that you might probably want to have out of that game. So let's set aside one last job because I do want to focus on the other one, the skeletons. We talked about this years and years ago on the podcast. In the skeletons, this GM-less game, you play a set of tomb defenders, skeletons, in this tomb over time. Essentially, intruders come in, you narrate how you fight them off, darkness falls, years and years pass, and then another set comes in, and there's some changes that happen in the epoch. This is a hack from Greg Gelder, and instead of being skeletons, you're droids who are left behind in Jabba's palace after his death. That happens in Return of the Jedi, which is very cool. It's a step of imagination that I don't know if I would have been able to make. Let me talk about what I liked about it. There are a bunch of different droids to choose from. You know, the assassin droid or the laborer droid or the maintenance droid. Amusingly, all four of us ended up choosing droids that like had no combat ability, and Keith Stetson had a gonk, which is a power droid with just 2 legs and a big box. And it was really funny. And the number of droids that Greg had built into the hack and what he said about them really helped enrich the setting. That gonk, for being just a power droid, had a great arc, because one of the things that can happen is you learn about your character as you go along. And about halfway through, there was sort of a revelation that, in fact, the gonk had served on these famous Star Wars warships. And even though they were just a power droid on them, they suddenly got the idea that maybe they were a war hero. So when we got to the final scene where this Sith came in, the gonk was like, okay, I guess I'm the war hero, and started shoot towards the Sith. And we all had a very tragic end at that point, of course. But it was really good. Like all of the characters changed and evolved in a really interesting way. It's a game that really works well with more of a person who is playing but also facilitating. Cody Eastlick did that for this. This was Cody's first time running on the Gauntlet, and they did a dynamite job. Sometimes with GM-less games, as a GM, you have to step in kind of with a heavy hand at the start to help model things for the players, and I thought they did a really good job with that. Other things I liked, the way that time passes in the game, and that as time passes, there's just a breakdown, and as more time passes in later sort of eras, things are decaying and falling apart, and you're marking on a map to show where things are collapsing, and that was really good. Greg Gelder has really interesting and evocative people who come in, like one of them were a set of sort of desperate moisture farmers, and other times it was like swoop bike gang members. But there were really interesting choices there. One of the things we did, and it's not necessarily in the rules as written, or at least it's not as explicit, in standard skeletons, your skeletons are there to defend and drive off invaders. Whereas here, we interpreted that somewhat liberally. Like when the moisture farmers came, we worked to give them some treasure from Jabba's treasury so that they could go and be okay and just kind of leave. It was that we were defending the whole space and didn't want to harm them. And that was a nice turn. So I really dug that. What I had some questions about, what I was less sure about, is there were a couple of places of terminology that needed to get fixed, but we didn't know what a rotation versus a cycle was, which one was a day and which one was a year. So only at the end did we kind of realize that we were saying days when we actually meant like years. So it was we thought it'd been like half a year, but it had actually been like 200.
Do droids care about years and days?
Well, but for us...
Depends on your calculation cycle in your CPU.
But for us, it was about how much is the place falling apart and how much has changed outside. Yeah, but
indeed, yeah.
Related to something that you talked about before, Garrett, one of the things is we're playing this online, and we're in a very particular mode, and the game asks you that when time passes, you turn off the lights and you sit there for 10 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
That can be so,
It's so
long.
long. And it's a real challenge online. Face to face, it's easier to manage that and control that. But sitting online, especially when you've got multiple screens around you, I mean, yeah, you can shut your eyes, but that's a harder thing. And I think because we kind of played that loosely, we didn't make that a strong focus of it. That sort of fell out. I don't know if you'd want to start and lead with the idea of the importance of that, or whether you just want to say each time we're just going to close our eyes for a minute and think about it. I don't know. So if someone is managing this online, they're going to have to consider really how that time pass, closing eyes, darkness, how that's handled. I will say the Skeletons is an older story game, and it has a great core concept, but it's very, very bare bones. It's got just a few set of questions for people, things like that. And it's not like real minimalist. Like, it's not deliberately minimalist to be evocative through what it doesn't talk about. It does try to provide questions and frameworks and things. And I would really like to see another iteration with more stuff, with more options, with more different directions. One of the things we've seen in recent years, especially with work by people like Jamie, is having really rich question sets and really rich prompts that are out there is a great way to build on that and develop that, especially with games like Firebrand's games that are just built around questions. Some of Jamila's designs for that have been really good, and I would love to see another pass that adds some more ways to go about that. I think Greg's done a magnificent job with it, but I'd like to see more. But, that's because I'm an American. So there we go. So that was what I'm less sure about. Questions, comments? Garrett, have you played the Skeletons?
I played it. I facilitated it on the Gauntlet some years ago. Yes, I had difficult circumstances. I was still living in Guatemala and we lost internet at home at that day. It just didn't work. I had to go to a cafe and they played cumbia, like this Mexican music, entertaining music at the same time. So I was sitting there in bright light, could close my eyes, but was still listening to. Yeah, it wasn't exactly the mood the game expected me to be in. So I thought, like, okay, I'm the facilitator. It's okay. But I tried my best to encourage the others to actually switch the light off.
So I really enjoyed myself. I wasn't sure if I was going to, but I had a great time. Cody Eastlick did a great job with it. It's a super game. I'm really excited that Greg has taken this up and done this hack. I love that idea. I had a great time and a chance to play in the Star Wars sort of sandbox.
Sounds fabulous.
So, listeners, we're going to move on to our second segment.
Hi, listeners. Jason from Gauntlet Publishing here. I want to tell you about a couple of new things we have for you this month. The first is Nephews in Peril, a major expansion for Brindlewood Bay, the game of cozy murder mysteries and supernatural horror. Nephews in Peril is a collection of 6 new mysteries for the game, each by a different fabulous author, and some revised rules and gameplay advice. It can be found in the $6 plus Gauntlet Patreon feed until October 15th, and then Drive-Thru RPG after that. The next thing I want to tell you about is Codex Home, the first issue in Volume 5 of the magazine. Codex Home features new material for Trophy Gold and Brindlewood Bay, plus the all-new game Back Again from the Broken Land, which is about fantasy heroes recounting stories as they return home from a calamitous war against a Dark Lord, all while evading the remnants of that Dark Lord's army. It's a fantastic Powered by the Apocalypse game, and we're delighted to share it with you later in October. Remember, your contributions to the Gauntlet Patreon help support everything we do in the community, including this very podcast. As always, thanks so much for your support.
So, listeners, in our second segment, we have our guest talk about a project they're working on, something they've done, a game they're interested in. So, Garrett, what do you want to talk about today? You've got so much that you've done in the last couple of years. So what is it you want to talk about?
So, live-action online games. Let me tell you, because I'm the evangelist of this play style, and now in the pandemic it has become a little bit more popular. As I mentioned earlier, community is important for me, so I would also like to talk about the community around live action online games. So first of all, what does it stand for? And it has live action in there. That is like in LARP, which also has live action in there. But instead of role-playing as the last part, this term has online in it, because we play online, and it has game in it. And why is game in there? Because what we do might be very different, but in the end, we are talking about a game, something we play together. And I really enjoy the concept of game, and I find it good to have this in there. So this is a game. And I think the term LARP is missing that, for example. Live action role-playing, is that a game or is that something else? Is that labor even? I don't know. So this term was invented by me. So it is not surprising that I like it. However, all other terms work equally well for me. Online LARP, digital LARP, virtual LARP, LARP, live online role-playing game. Many different terms for that. And I decided when I wrote the manifesto, which you can find online, the LARC manifesto, I decided to come up with a new term because I thought it is worth for this design framework, for this play culture, to have a new term. So it is not a derivative of something which is already in existence. So we don't say, this is what LARPers do, but now it's online, or this is tabletoppers plus a little bit of LARP and online or whatever, but this is something new and it deserves its own space and it can find its own community. It is not owned already by a group. And that is something I think also more frameworks should aim for. I started LARC because I was living in rural Guatemala and I really liked LARPing, and I saw that there are games which are designed for face-to-face. I thought, but I want to play them. And so how can I do that? And the first thing I did was I designed the online version of what came out at that time, Winterhorn, a political game by Jason Morningstar, in which you play the nasty bureaucracy of a not so liberal state which tries to tear down a group of political activists. Maybe even states which consider themselves liberal might do this. I heard so. I will not talk more about this because I don't want anybody to jump into this call and listen to us and hunting us down. Sorry, no, I'm joking. I did this. I played this on the Gauntlet. I was surprised how well it worked, that this game used a diegetic approach in Winterhorn. So the video call is a video call. So no, these bureaucrats are not meeting in a meeting room, but they meet online because they are in home office for some reason. And that worked smoothly, and you could bring something like I can't hear you or you're muted into the game and say so as your character. And that is always fun. Because now you can shout at people and be mean to people for being muted all the time, which you wouldn't do if you're talking to the player. But then I was also made aware of the fact that making LARPs to be played online opens the realm of playing in character and live action, like with your full body and staying in character and stuff, for a whole new audience. People who have anxieties to go to face-to-face events, who don't have the financial resources to travel a lot and pay a hotel or whatever to go somewhere, who are not sure if they are welcome where they are because they belong to certain marginalized groups, for example, and are not sure if this white dominated space, which LARP in many countries is so welcoming actually. So being able to play this online and also providing actual play examples opened a whole new space also for community. And this is where the community aspect came into. Like, how can we promote this? To give you some design ideas, like what kind of games came out of this, I obviously need to also mention a couple of games by me. I talked about the Batcave already, and Outscott was also mentioned already, but here I would also like to mention Makeup Moments, where you play people going to a party or a big social event together and put makeup on. And this game lives from the fact that if you put yourself into the focus on a video call, then your camera works like a mirror. And you can put makeup on and get close to the camera and do your eyeliner and at the same time talk to the others who are doing the same. This game is about enthusiastic support. So you only celebrate each other. You don't need any makeup skills, but you still do your best. But in the end, everybody will love what you have done. And you're giving yourself tips or fake tips. Well, we know how that works. We are role players, right? So this is, for example, makeup moments. That was published, by the way, in Gauntlet Codex.
Codex Glamour, right?
Glamour 2, yes, exactly. Last Words was also published in Codex. And Last Words is known for having an asymmetric setup. So you play this with 3 people. And there the design goal was two-sided. One was to have this asymmetric setup work where somebody is not allowed to have their sound volume on, so they can't hear what the others are saying. Somebody else is muted and can't talk. You have a Google drawing, so you can at least express whatever you have to say there. But only one other player has access to that Google drawing, and the other player not. But the third player you actually want to communicate to. So you have a little bit of, I don't know how you say that in English, this telephone game, this kind of effect. But I also wanted to design a game here which is audience focused. And the way it is set up is that those who watch the actual play get the whole story. They can see the drawing, they can hear everybody, because those which are muted are actually connected to the video call through a phone connection. You have a separate voice channel for that. But all the players are lacking information, communication channels. So that is Last Words, for example. And the setting, by the way, is one person has recently died and somebody misses them a lot and comes to their graveyard to visit them there, talks to the grave. The dead person's spirit is there and responds, but the living can't hear them. However, there's an angel next to the grave who can't hear the living, but can hear the deceased. And that angel then sends dreams to the living, and this is the drawing. So this is, for example, the setup for that game. And the last game I want to mention is After Dark. That's by Mo Holker, so a game which is not by me. And that is a game super fascinating because you play that a virus, yes, unfortunately, again, a virus, is going around in the world, but this virus is sensitive to sound. When people talk, it gets attracted, it gets closer, that virus. So you are connected through a video call in this game, but you don't want to talk too loudly. You're just whispering because it could attract the virus. Even a ching from a glass of water makes you nervous. You don't want to see anybody go. So suddenly, the way you talk is part of the game. And if you start be a little bit more careful about how you say things, it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
That's great.
I think it's a quite strong experience you can create with that game. So where did it all start? ViewScreen was the very first LARP, and I think it was called Virtual LARP. I'm not sure anymore. It came out in 2013 and inspired a lot of people, and it was played a lot. However, it found hardly any successors. Raphael Chandler made a beautiful game with that. It's a little bit competitive because it's about survival and everybody has 3 problems and only 2 solutions. And you hand them out and you can see already not everybody can survive in this aliens invade your starship, who will survive game. And then, as I already said, Winterhorn was then my first attempt to bring an existing LARP into the online world. The Election of the Wine Queen, also published in a Gauntlet Codex in Sunlight, then came out. But then I started to design and also looked for others online, and I found Tara Klepper. And Tara is coming from, she's an American LARPer, and she's organizing events online and paid LARPs online, which also go over several days. So she does something very different from what from my story game background, is designing. So we had quite fruitful and interesting conversations about design and learned a lot from each other. That was quite cool. And together we found, at the beginning of the year, a Facebook group, which now has more than 700 or nearly 800 people in there and talking about live action online games. And it's quite a cool community. So very supportive. You need to tell the admins like what interests you in the hobby in LARC and before we let you in. So it's also like a selected kind of crowd. It's the place to be at the moment, I would say, if you're interested in this. For me, what was always important was to create actual plays. And that is something not until recently nobody else has done. Like recording what you have done is something I only found the courage to on the Gauntlet. Also because I saw how the pros did it, and also I could see that no direct harm comes from that. And what many people fear in actual plays is that replay becomes performative, but that was not my experience at the Gauntlet. I think you quickly forget that you're actually recorded, not in the sense that you are running into risk. So in your back of your mind, you're still aware, but it doesn't change the way you play that drastically as many people think who haven't recorded their games yet. That's at least my experience. That might not be true for everybody, obviously. So we had actual plays of the games. We had a couple of people writing games and doing games. We had also communities like the Gauntlet, which supported the idea. The Golden Cobra also made it a category last year already. But that was all on the periphery. Okay, interesting, weird, exciting at its best. And then the pandemic came. And suddenly, thousands of LARPers thought, what shall we do this summer? And since then, we have seen many, many, many new games out there, design ideas. It's incredible what is going on in that space. We also see new technology coming into play. The latest and most exciting for me, for example, are the spatial platforms, where you chat in a two-dimensional space, and the further away you push your avatar, the less you can hear the other person.
Oh,
so you can overhear conversations, for example. You have Legend of Zelda kind of optic in Gather Town, where the GM can draw houses and rivers which can't be passed and stuff like that, and then talk to people. So you get this kind of feeling that you're in a video game, but you can design in that for a LARP because it's actually just a video call organized differently. Zoom breakout rooms are nothing different, but it's just more visual. Then we saw the rise of Discord games, which are designed perfectly for Discord, and Discord bots make so different games possible because they can react to what players do and open new rooms, for example, after specific events. So Touch My Elf is a fantastic example where you play a community of elf lovers who try to get closer and to date, maybe also. Very different elves, from Tolkien elves to Christmas elves. So it's also difficult to get along in that game. And so currently what I've seen is that every month at least, or even every second week, I would even say, there is an online convention for such games. And that makes me really happy because for a long, long time, I felt quite alone on this front. Yeah, that is what I wanted to tell you about live action online games. And I can only invite everybody to take a look.
So let's say you go, oh, I'm interested in this Layog thing. Is there a place that you can go to where you go, here's some lists of different ones that you can go take a look at?
Well, for self-promotion reason, I unfortunately need to state that my blog is a good place to start.
Yes.
Because I have a blog articles called Overview of Existing Live-Action Online Games. You will also find the manifesto there. And few further links, I link to where you can get the game, usually where you can get a free version, because many have a free version and a paid version. Like, for example, Gauntlet Codex always allows you to still keep the text in your hands, and so you can get the edited and beautifully laid out version in the codex, or you get the text blank as a Google Doc for free. And then there's also an actual play linked to it where you can go. The other great place to just have a look at an amazing list of games is the Golden Cobra Challenge 2020 edition, where you find 60 at least LARPs. Well, some of them are epistolary kind of games, but that's just a matter of definition if you want to also call them LARPs or not. For them, if you don't have that much time to go through 60 to find a suitable one, then you just look at the winners of this year.
If you'll give us like whatever links you want, we'll put them in the show notes to direct people to your blog and whatever other groups you think people should be checking out.
I'll do so. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about live action online game, a concept which came from the Gauntlet and now returned to the Gauntlet.
It's great, and I am glad that you had this ready for the people who were impacted by what's happened in 2020. Like, it's amazing to me that you developed these tools to support play.
Cool.
Listeners, now we're going to go to our third segment. So in our third segment, which we call Giving Me Life, each of us is going to discuss something that is lately inspiring us or giving us joy. Sherry, what is giving you life?
Oh my gosh. So I was thinking back, and for the last month on the Gauntlet, I have only play tests and fast hacks. And looking back at the year, 85% of what I've been playing has been these in-progress labors of love by various Gauntlet folks. And it has literally been the best year of gaming ever. There's something about being in that first nascent part of the game where the designer is there and you're playing it and you're seeing it for the first time and you're figuring out what's going to happen with what you've got in front of you. And it's so fun. It has been, I never know what to expect. And I'm always so impressed by all the talent that I see here. It has been amazing.
Awesome.
I totally agree. Yes, that's also my favorite part.
Yeah, 100%. And it's been a pleasure to try things out, to see other people work, and to see people be brave to put their things out there, which I adore. Garrett, what is giving you life?
There's the word again. It's a community. And out of terrible things, sometimes good things come up. And one is that the fire at the house we were living in, it didn't destroy the whole house, but it is now free because everybody who was living in there has now found a new place and don't consider to return. And my family has now decided that we want to buy the place together with others as a cooperative and will renovate it in a way that it better suits families' needs, but also older groups and people with disabilities. And the house has a large garden, so we will also be able to do gardening there. And currently we meet every second week with people interested and discuss with them how that should be organized. We meet an architect who is like presenting us new plans and floor plans and how it could look like. And that is a lot of work, but quite exciting. It could be the most important project for this decade for me.
Awesome.
That is amazing.
I'm so glad that something good has come out of that situation. For us, it was 10, 12 years ago. And there were some things that came out that were positives, net positives in that.
Yeah, I heard about that, yeah. What I would like to add to that is people. Think about how you live and if this is how you want to live actually, or if there's something, how you could change that. How can you open the doors to your neighbors? How can you do something together with them? Extend your space, extend your mind. And yes, that will bring more conflict, but conflicts will make us grow. And what else do we want from life? Then constantly growing.
For me, what's giving me life, and I think I'm following on the sort of the parallel track of both of you, is I've been really happy with what's gone on in the Gauntlet community lately. We had a really nice open meeting of people. We talked about ways that we can better bring new players in to get them into games and find them places. And people were working towards setting up games that are just for new people who want to try out games. You know, the Gauntlet Community Open Gaming came out of a community project. We've just done a round of our Gauntlet facilitator camps, where an experienced person works with 3 new GMs in a workshop to help them get used to running online. And those have been really successful. Of course, we've just done this Star Wars Saturday Special Edition. We've opened up the Slack for anybody who plays in a Gauntlet game can come and join the Slack. All of these things. Just this last month, it's been really exciting that people have been talking about things and moving on things. And that is most assuredly giving me life that we're here at a good place at the end of a hell year in its own way. Garrett, where can people follow you or check in on the work that you're doing? Do you have a Twitter account?
I have a Twitter account. That's G Ridinghouse. And, well, better look into the show notes how to properly spell Ridinghouse. Or Google Garrett Ridinghouse. I'm fortunately the only one with that name in this world, on this planet. And yes, I'm also on Facebook, also with my full name, Garrett Ridinghouse. And then my blog is allesistzahl.de. That is a Pythagoras quote, all is number. As I once studied mathematics and philosophy. That is a relic from that time, but I think still true to some degree, and it doesn't exclude the existence of things beyond numbers, and still it is true.
Listeners, if you've enjoyed the show, I hope you'll consider checking out our Patreon, which supports this podcast as well as the other podcasts in our network, which is on Patreon/Gauntlet. I believe if you search for us there, you can find out more about the Gauntlet, our gaming calendar, and all the things that we do on gauntlet-rpg.com. We've got another open gaming weekend coming up the end of February in 2021. If you go to your podcaster of choice and rate and review us, that does help. It does increase our visibility, and that's certainly a nice thing for us. You can also contact us at Gauntlet RPG on Twitter if you need to send us a message or have a question. So those are all things that are part of the end of episode admonitions that I do. Sherry, thank you for co-hosting again.
It was a joy and a pleasure.
And Garrett, I'm just so happy that we were able to talk with you today. Like, really, honestly, deeply happy. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you both so much. I love you too.
Listeners, that is our show. As I'm tearing up here, I apologize.